Two former Federal Medical Center correctional officers indicted for civil rights violations, including sexual abuse of inmates. In two separate indictments, two former correctional officers who worked for the Bureau of Prisons Federal Medical Center in Lexington have been indicted for federal civil rights and sexual abuse violations. The grand jury returned an indictment charging a 45-year-old out of Winchester, Kentucky, of one count of deprivation of rights under color of law, one count of aggravated sexual abuse by force, 7 counts of abusive sexual contact, 3 counts of sexual abuse of a ward, and 1 count of providing a prohibited object to an inmate. That right there, for the grand jury and the actual prosecutors to actually uh, go forward with all them charges is a good sign. It's actually a very, very good conviction, or actually of a explanation of the actual evidence to a grand jury. That's the way all should be like that, not just one count like you usually see with cops. The cops you usually just see one actual count, and they'll really, really um, downplay it into a almost sometimes even to a misdemeanor charge. For these guys. But they got this right. They got enough charges where he is going to be labeled as a sex offender, and this actual 45-year-old. Uh, the indictment alleges that on several occasions between April 2019 and September 2019, he engaged in sexual conduct with 4 inmates that were actually under his custody. That's a big key factor to that power, you know what I mean? The indictment alleges that on at least one of those occasions, he sexually abused an inmate by using a threat that if the victim did not comply, they'd be subject to death, bodily injury, or kidnapping. There you go. It's also alleged that he actually supplied cigarettes to a different actual inmate. And in a different indictment, a 42-year-old out of Phoenix City, Alabama, um, was charged with 2 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law, 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse by force or threat, 8 counts of sexual abuse of a ward, 2 counts of abusive sexual contact, and 1 count of providing a prohibited object to an inmate. So when you always hear deprivation of rights under the color of law, that means that they actually conducted this actual crime while on uniform with the badge, and not this case, but sometimes with an actual firearm. And that right there is intimidating by itself. It's actually a show of force at the end of the day. And so the indictment alleges that between 2019 and December 2019, he engaged in sexual conduct with 5 inmates in his under his custody. It is alleged that he sexually abused 2 of his victims by using a threat that their family and children would be killed or harmed if they did not comply. The indictment also alleges that he was a drug treatment specialist. That's a big, big, how do you say, credential, especially in these actual BOPs, the Bureau of Prisons. To have that title, yeah, it's a big, that's a big you get a lot of privileges. You can get a lot of privilege and good pay. He's also indicted, also alleges that he was a drug treatment specialist, but then again provided um it's SUBOXONE. I don't know how to pronounce that, to an inmate among other prohibited items. So not only was he a drug counselor, he also supplied for the prison at times, and that's not good, especially when you have that title. And they haven't been actually sentenced yet, but they're scheduled to appear. Well, we'll check up on it here shortly, see what they're actually looking at. Anywhere from 15 to 20 years they'll actually get, uh, according to all this. Not unless they do a plea agreement, but the feds are not going to be interested in an actual plea agreement because they'll maybe if you give up information on if you cooperate, they'll they won't reduce your time. They'll actually just drop charges. But don't forget, the actual federal government, they can actually set you up to where you're doing sentencings back to back, not all at once. So if you get a couple of years for some kind of enhance, and then you get the 5 years on top of that, so that's 7 years. You're not gonna get the 5 years combined, the two and the five. Now you're gonna do. It depends, and if the judge finds it that he wants to do it concurrently, it's up to him. Okay, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe. Thanks.